Yeah. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next Gen Data Aspirants community. Say good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're part of the world. So a warm welcome you to all for joining this call. So now here we have our speaker Anusha. So she is a specialist in BA solutions. So I'm going to handing over the session to speaker. So Anusha, a warm welcome to you also. So take the session. Now floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Suparna. Hi, everyone. Very good evening. I'd like to start this session by thanking the NDAC community for giving me this opportunity, to present my views and opinions today. And I hope that this session will be helpful, and you will be able to learn something new out of this session once we end it. So, yeah, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to share my screen. Do let me know once it is visible.
Yes, Anusha, we are able to see your screen.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. So guys, today we will be covering the real-world migration strategies, architectural choices, and advanced capabilities in Fabric that supports modern analytic workflows. But then before we start, here's the agenda of this session that I have planned out. I hope I'm audible, guys. Can you just give me a small confirmation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So here's the small agenda of the session. We are going to start with understanding what Microsoft Fabric really is and what are the four major foundation pillars of Microsoft Fabric. Post that, we will also have a small demo on the look and feel of the fabric, and we'll also keep continuing to have demos wherever it is required in this session. So let's get started. Well, before we move to understand what Microsoft Fabric is, with this special session specifically talking about an on-premises data warehouse, let's first understand, why do we have to modernize it all? Well, of course, it's the most basic question that comes to on-prem versus cloud features. The on-premises systems are becoming, increasingly difficult to manage due to their complexity and fragility. These systems are often, outdated, are currently using outdated hardware and software, and these are also leading to higher maintenance costs, longer downtime, and greater risk of failures. And they also require several manual interventions like, your patchworks and your downtimes, which only adds to the challenge. And these systems are also resource heavy and very less efficient nowadays. With respect to data silos also, when your data is stored in different separate systems or departments, it's very hard to get a complete view of the business. That leads us to understand why Fabric. Just a second, my screen seems to be hung.
Yeah, we will wait.
So why Fabric? Well, Fabric is your Microsoft's all-in-one data platform. Think of it like a super app that brings together everything you need to work with data, whether you're a data engineer, a BI developer, or even someone who just wants to, build cool dashboards. And I hope in this session, there are already many of you who have built such cool dashboards already with Power BI. Earlier, we used to have separate tools for different things. You had Synapse for data warehousing, you had Power BI for reporting, you had Data Factory for pipelines. Each one did its own job, but they're like the cousins who don't talk much. Well, Fabric brings them everything under one roof, speaking the same language, sharing the same storage, and working together seamlessly. And also, guys, the best part is that it is a SaaS native product, which means you don't need to worry about setting up the servers. You don't have to worry about managing the clusters, or you even don't have to worry about patching the systems. Just log in, pick your workload, whether it's data movement, data science, warehousing, or reporting, you're good to go right away. And guys, the only attachment to Azure with respect to Fabric is your capacity. Everything else is in one SaaS environment. So for someone who's pretty much new to understanding what Fabric is, I'd like to mention that there are 4 basic pillars of the basic 4 foundation pillars of Fabric. That is, 1 compute for processing, 1 format for structured data, 1 lake for storage, and 1 experience for users and governance. So what is 1 compute for processing? All your architectures, all your Synapse data warehousing, your data engineering, data factory, data science, real-time analytics, your Power BI, everything that is present in this current architecture that I'm showing on screen uses only 1 compute capacity. So in previous, probably before you guys had moved, before we moved to Fabric, we would have been having an Azure SQL server somewhere. We used to have Power BI service somewhere where we had your premium capacities. We used to keep paying for our Azure. We used Azure data storage. We used to keep paying for our say ADF to get your ETL onto place, and then you used to have Power BI reports. When it comes to your SQL on-premises data warehouse, you used to have your on-premises data gateways also for connecting to Power BI. So having such independent workloads in different levels used to give us a lot of costing. But with respect to Fabric, all these comes under 1 compute capacity. So we will have to pay the price at only at 1 shot. That is your compute for processing. So the next one is 1 format for structured data. That is whatever structured data is present in Fabric is all in Delta Lake format. The third is 1 lake for your storage, which we will be having a better understanding in the future slides. And the fourth is your 1 experience for users and governance, which means that be it a BI developer, be it a business analyst, be it a Power BI user or a report developer, everyone has to come and log into 1 single unified platform. So that's basically what an overview is regarding the understanding of Fabric. Now let's move on. So let's move on to the most important component of Microsoft Fabric, that is your 1 lake. So when you try to understand 1 lake in a very simplistic format, maybe you can compare it with OneDrive. OneDrive is basically, where you store your data, your Excel files or Word files or something, or any company-related documents in OneDrive, and you keep sharing it with your organization employees. So 1 lake is similar to your OneDrive, but then 1 lake is for your entire data of the organization. Think about the previous scenarios. What used to happen? You used to do all your hard work to create that 1 gold copy, that is 1 final warehouse. Let's say that you kept that gold copy on Azure Synapse or an Azure SQL or a Cosmos DB. Then you go to Power BI, and then, of course, your Power BI works best with import mode. So what does that mean? You had to import the entire data into Power BI report. You had to create, and then on top of that, you had to create 1 refresh for that. And even though that could be a simple refresh, you still have to allocate time for that particular refresh, and then schedule the refreshes, and there may be several concerns with respect to refresh failures or data not being refreshed in the backend. But then in Microsoft Fabric, the technologies understand each other. So if I say the structured data, if I save the structured data in a lakehouse, the warehouse understands it. It's the same data format. Power BI can work directly with the same data using your direct lake mode. So what's happening here is that the simplistic thing to understand is that we are not creating or we are not duplicating the data just because one technology can't understand another technology. Everything is in the same data format file, and each engine can read, write, or do both. And the best part is that as soon as your gold layer is ready, you are also report ready. That is, you can immediately start creating your Power BI reports. So while this session is specifically talking about migration from an on-premises data warehouse to Microsoft Fabric, let's understand what could be a migration. What are the steps that we need to follow before we move to Fabric? It could not just maybe while drawing comparisons, it could not just be the on-premises data warehouse. It could also be your any other SQL warehouse where you have your facts and dimension tables, where you have that gold layer present. So what happens in the assessment is first, you need to understand the current landscape. You need to understand what databases you have, what are the schemas, what are the tables, volumes, and how much is the update frequency. You need to also make a list of the ETL pipelines that are present and what are the scheduling jobs, what are the link servers. And apart from that, you also need to identify what are the current reporting reports that are available. That is your, say, for example, your SSRS reports, or could be your Excel sheets, or could be your Power BI reports that you have built on that. And then you'll also have to understand that an on-premises, the code that's functioning on on-premises is a bit different to that of Microsoft Fabric. So what functions work on on-premises and what functions do not work on Fabric. So a comparison between these two. For example, to give you a sound understanding on the functions not being yet on Fabric is, merge. So merge is such a kind of function that we use continuously. I mean, we use very frequently for our incremental uploads, right? But then Microsoft Fabric still doesn't have the merge function and live yet. So how do we have an alternative to merge function? So do we have to run two separate queries? That is your update query and then your insert query. Or do you want to run this entirely into, in Notebook? Because Notebook has merge statements enabled. So these kind of understanding of the basic differences on what works now, what works and what doesn't work on Fabric should be a part of your migration strategy. Apart from this, there are also several other points to be considered, like your workload classification. You need to understand what are the high risk, what are the medium risk, and what are the low risk categories. Basically, your low risk category, guys, is more into your historical data or your archive data that has been, since long been there in that system for maybe before you have joined the firm or maybe since the inception of the firm as well. So such kind of data which is not being used you could keep it into the last category of Fabric data migration. And the first category could be the tables and data, which is highly being used for your reporting purposes or for your analytic purposes. And the second and the next points could be your data profiling, your baseline metrics, and your outputs. Basically, whatever ETL job is currently working in the on-premises, suppose it takes an hour. When you move to Fabric, you would still want to have it, in 1 hour or less than 1 hour. So how do you do that? What are the strategies and performance tuning that you have to apply in Fabric is also to be considered here. So before we move on to the tools comparison, let me just go and for everyone who's a new beginner to Fabric, let me give you an overview on how Fabric looks and let's try to understand, guys, how Fabric is different from Microsoft, when compared to Power BI interface. So at the start, our login page would be the same. Either you go to app.powerbi.com or you go to app.fabric.com. It still leads you to Microsoft Fabric. So here I have two workspaces at the present moment. So I have a Power BI workspace, which runs on Power BI Pro license. And then I have a test workspace, which is a Fabric workspace. So with any of you who is only familiar with Power BI reports, you understand that in this workspace, once you log in, there are three types of objects that you usually have in this workspace. That is your report, your semantic model, and your dashboard. Do let me know in the comment section if there is any other type of object that I might have missed out in this pro licensed workspace. But then once, okay, so this is your workspace. As of now, it's only for reporting purpose. Then how do you, so the first question comes is, you want to look at understanding of what Fabric is, then how do you activate Fabric? So basic simple step, you go to your account name. Here you get an option to create, to start the Fabric trial license, since it's already there and I have 53 days left. So yeah, I'm on trial license right now. So probably guys, here I can distinguish between two types of attendees today. So one, attendees who already are working in an organization which has Power BI since long. For those, you can just go directly activate your Fabric and trial, and it activates immediately. But then for people who want to learn Fabric and who are new, who do not have who cannot use your company's account, the alternate, how do you kickstart Fabric and learn? So that leads us to you having work or an you should be basically, for logging into Power BI, you should have either of the two work IDs. That is your official mail ID, your work, or your student ID. So here I have an Azure ID that I already had, for which I had created one. But then as soon as you create your account, the Fabric tenant will not kick off. It requires minimum 90 days. So that particular ID should be active in the Azure for at least 90 days, post which only you can kickstart your Fabric trial license. So that's the so this is for everyone who is like want to use a non-work ID account to learn Fabric. Please make a note of that. So now let me just go to the Fabric workspace. Let's understand what all further objects that you see here. So when I click on new item, so yeah, I know that this this particular window is very overwhelming and very exciting also to see, because there are so many objects that, so many items that Fabric is giving us with respect to visualization, with respect to developing your data, with respect to your different types of warehouses and lake houses that you have. So yeah, that's a very exciting list, and I hope that and I'm pretty sure that this list will keep on continuing, and more things will keep on adding from the Microsoft team. So let's go back to this. For the touch and feel of this workspace of Fabric, you can see that you have many objects that you can create. That means in the same workspace, you can create your data warehouse, you can create your lake house, you can have your pipelines, those that are your ETL pipelines. With this ETL pipelines also, you can, for the data push to Fabric, you can use your Gen 1, Gen 2, or a data pipeline. Or guys, you can also use your regular existing ADF also to push data to Fabric. With respect to data storage, you have Lakehouse, Warehouse, Azure SQL DB, etc. Let's go back to the slide. So before we like for an on-premises versus Fabric, let's try to understand the tool evaluation. So for data warehousing on-premises, what do you have? You have your SQL Server, you have your Oracle, you have your IBM DB2, or anything else that you can probably post it in the chat. And then for what are the Fabric alternatives for that? Fabric gives you majorly 3 different types of data storage, data warehouses. That is your lakehouse, your warehouse, and your Fabric database. Fabric database is usually for an OLTP kind of workload that you want to do, probably for your AI and machine learning capabilities. You can continue using your and you want your OLTP, then you can use your Fabric database. For your ETL, as I mentioned before, examples for your on-prem being SSIS or Informatica, while the Fabric alternatives could be your ADF, your Fabric data flows, pipelines, Apache Airflows, anything. Data orchestration again could be your Control-M, Autosys, SSIS job scheduler, while the Fabric alternatives will be your pipelines. The same goes for reporting, guys. You used to have on-premises, you used to have SSRS reports for as a Microsoft tool. Here you have paginated reports. So when I was talking about the one lake, And also regarding the databases, it's important to understand, guys, what exactly is the storage format of the entire fabric. As I mentioned, Delta Lake. But let's try to understand and differentiate between the this storage format, the Delta Lake format, with the formats that we are already familiar of. Example, the first slide that I mean, the first picture in the towards the left side is your row level storage. That is, you have a select statement. So what happens under it is that it goes row by row, and keeps searching for the one that you want. It's your regular row level search. And then on the second image is I have is your columnar store indexes, where columns are being stored. Basically, column-wise data is getting stored here. But then let's move on to what a Parquet file is. So the Parquet file, which is the main concept of the data structure in Fabric, is that the Parquet file has your data in columnar storage. But apart from that, the Parquet file also has something called row groups. So you have row group 1, 2, 3, and you also have column 1, 2, 3 getting stored in different places. So what's more, so that's not the only part that's exciting about the Parquet file, guys. The better part of Parquet file is that it also compresses the data. And you might ask me one question. So, okay, I do the row grouping here. It's all in column wise, but how do the query engine know which row group it has to go to fetch the data? That is because the Parquet file format has something called file metadata. So that means along with the data, it is also storing the metadata of the file or the table, which means it is storing what is the minimum value, what is the maximum value, what are the data types. Okay, so these are all that are there. Okay, this is the metadata, this is the encoding. Okay, fine, good. So once it is storing this, as soon as you hit a query, it's obvious that it will, with this lot of metadata information within the file, the query performance will be pretty much far way better than your existing queries that you're hitting on your on-premises. I hope that is clear, guys. So now comes to the understanding of okay, chalo, you understand what Parquet file format is, but then what is a delta table, which you are saying is the core concept of data in Fabric? Well, delta table, a Parquet file with atomicity, the rules of atomicity, that is your, I'm sorry guys, yeah. So Parquet files following the atomicity will give you a delta file. So basically delta file will be having your, with delta file, you can have your transaction setup. That is, you will also have your history being tracked. So all those kind of stuff will make a Parquet file as a delta lake format. So back to the workspace. Let me just take a moment in checking any new messages that we might have, and if any queries. Yeah, no queries, then yes, we can move here. So I hope you guys are able to understand it. Supan, do I have any audio issues?
Yes, you are clear. You can.
Thank you so much. Yes. So this comes to, so this slide particularly talks about the architecture of Fabric. So fine, you are currently working in an organization, and your team is already into Power BI reports. You have created vast number of beautiful reports throughout the organization. Your CEO is looking at it, your CTO is looking at it, everyone's happy. But then your project manager says that I want to now move to Fabric. So you tell me, what are the next steps? Well, the first step is obviously getting your trial capacity activated so you can start exploring it. And the second is first understanding, okay, the first step is obviously to put data into Fabric, right? And a Fabric DB is for your OLTP. So that leaves us with two major options, that is your warehouse and your lakehouse. So you need to understand. So in this slide, we are going to give you this slide is basically telling you what a lakehouse is and what a warehouse is. So a lakehouse is best suited for your So basically, lakehouse can have both semi-raw and unstructured data. Both unstructured and structured can be stored in a lakehouse, while warehouse is where your structured data is present. So, I have taken this particular architecture from the Microsoft Docs, which gives you a questionnaire of understanding what is the right data architecture for the data that's present in my existing workload. That is, how do you want to develop? Which is, there are two kinds of developments that can happen here. One is Spark for a lakehouse and T-SQL for a warehouse. Spark for a lakehouse and a T-SQL for a warehouse. And if you have multi-table transactions, yes, if yes, then you choose a warehouse. If no, you choose a lakehouse. And the third being the data complexity. So you don't know what everything is. Okay, you put it in lakehouse. You know that it has both unstructured and structured data. You go for a lakehouse. And you know that your final data is your structured one. You have good number of gold layers. Say you have facts, you have dimensions created, you have a star schema ready. You go directly to a warehouse. Which leads us to something called understanding of what a Medallion architecture is. So guys, this Medallion architecture is a very familiar name that you keep hearing out when you start having conversations of Fabric within your organization. So when I was talking about the previous slides saying ki, acha, what do I have to select? What is my final say? So say for example, my final warehouse is structured data. So what happens here? So my goal layer is warehouse that I have finalized. But then where should my raw data come from? Once that raw data is processed, where should my staging be? And from raw data to staging, how do I get the data? And from staging to goal layer, how do I take the sub data? Which functionality of Fabric should I use? All these questions lead to what is called the Medallion architecture. What the Medallion architecture says is that you can divide the data into 3 layers. That is your bronze, your silver, and your gold layer. So all the data sources, as you can see in this architecture, these are the raw, suppose these are the raw files. These come into the bronze layer. So bronze layer is something where your raw data is being placed. So on that raw data, you might want to, change some data types, rename some columns, remove bad data. You want to remove some extra information that you may not require. So for all those kinds of transformations of cleaning the data, you clean and then you put it into a silver layer. And from silver to gold layer is basically your, for example, say incremental jobs, staging to final facts and dimensions. How do you take up? You have your merge statements. For this merge, you can have two things that are with you. You can use your warehouse stored procedures. You can also use your notebooks where you can run your merge queries. Post your gold layer, it's direct, as I mentioned before, it's directly creation of Power BI reports without any refresh schedule, without any imports, or without any, raising tickets for getting access to those particular data sources for creating reports. So nothing like that is things like that are no longer required here in Fabric. So let's move on to a short demo here, guys. So I have an on-premises SQL server in my laptop that I had installed. So consider this as an existing system that I already have. And let's say the target by the end of this session is to push these tables to Fabric and also recreate or maybe repoint these Power BI reports that have been created on this SQL server to Fabric. So here I had pre-staging environment for my raw data, I had staging, I had warehouse. So once my warehouse was created, in this warehouse, I have around 4 sample tables that I have loaded. Basically, 3 of them are dimensions and 1 is your fact. So from pre-staging to staging, I used my SSIS packages. And from staging to warehouse, I used stored procedures for my incremental loop. Post that, I had in my system installed an on-premises data gateway. This on-premises data gateway, guys, is for connecting for people who are not familiar with on-premises data gateway. Basically, it is the gateway that is required to connect your data that is present in your server to that of Power BI. So basically, for any kind of refreshes that you require from an on-premises server, you would require on-premises data gateway. So before I make a use of on-premises data gateway, here is a small Power BI report that I had created, which is using DIM customer date issue policy. I should say, pardon me for making this a very simple report. I know that the members in this meeting have created far better reports than me, than what is created here. But yeah, this is just a sample report. So what I had to do for creating this report is that I had to go to my get data. I had to connect to a SQL server. And then I had to, give my credentials here for the on-premises data server. Click on the import mode, take those tables, and then use my data model and then create the report relationships. Then go ahead and creating the report. But then once my report is ready for refresh, I had to go to Microsoft, Power BI service. I had the next steps for this is obviously connecting your on-premises data gateway. You go to manage connections. So you already have so the first step is obviously setting up your on-premises data gateway. Post that, you create a data source. For example, the data source for me here is my warehouse, in which I had used the on-premises data gateway to connect to my to connect the data of my Power BI report to the actual SQL server. So this is the step that I followed on the on-premises end. So what do I do now in Fabric? So how do I move this particular workload that is using my SSIS, my staging, my pre-staging, staging, warehouse, and my Power BI with an on-premises data gateway to Microsoft Fabric? So for that, guys, let's go ahead and create one workspace, which is running on Fabric. Whose license is allocated to Fabric. So here I'll be selecting the trial. So I click on a new item. First, as I mentioned before, we need to understand what should be the final warehouse. So I say since my data is structured, I want to keep the gold layer as my warehouse. So where should my pre-staging be? That is my bronze layer. I want to create a lakehouse here for my raw data, because in future I might have several files, Excel files or CSVs that I want to directly push to Fabric. So it's always better to keep keep a lake house as a bronze layer, because it gives us far more flexibility when compared to having a warehouse as a bronze layer, because obviously you want to have unstructured data, you want to explore more in Fabric. So once for loading my raw data files to Fabric, I would require to create a data source connectivity again to my raw files. So for that, if my raw files are on some on-premises data gateway, I can still here connect. I will have to connect my on-premises data gateway. Say for example, I can use a data flow Gen 2, connect my on-premises data gateway and get those tables into Fabric. So just for the convenience of saving time in this session, I'll go forward and I'll be showing you the workspace that I've already created here for giving us an idea. So here I had, so this is my lake house. My LH1 is my lake house, which I had created for my staging tables. This is a bit slow, probably because since this is in a trial capacity, it's taking time to load. So let me keep this Gen 2 open here to show you the pipeline that I had used to push data into raw file, push the raw files there. So this is my test workspace, as I mentioned. So here this is my lakehouse, and then where I have my raw data tables. So here's my, say for example, my branch ka raw data and my customer raw data is present here. Suppose this, like if I can have a bronze layer. A bronze layer could be, a separate lake house, or it could also be a separate schema in the same within the same lake house itself. It all depends on the kind of requirement that you have at your organization. Suppose that so how do you bring your data from the lake house to your warehouse? This you can have again, as Fabric is giving you multiple opportunities to multiple objects that you can explore. For example, say you are a traditional SQL developer, then you can use your warehouse stored procedures where you run your SQL queries to push data into Fabric. So see, when choosing when the primary essential that I might have missed out when discussing about choosing a lakehouse versus warehouse is that, guys, it also depends on the kind of team expertise that you have within your development team. So if your team is familiar with your on-premises T-SQL and the on-premises structured data, it's good to go for a warehouse. But if your team is more into notebooks and Apache Airflows and great with analytics, and also Python, they can directly use a lakehouse. So choosing a lakehouse and a warehouse could also depend on the capabilities, the technical capabilities of your team, basically. So here is my warehouse. So where my facts and dimensions have been loaded. So this warehouse can be considered as your gold layer. You can go ahead very well and rename this warehouse as a warehouse gold layer also. So it all depends on your, the formats that you're going to keep in your organization. So I'm going back to the slide and I'm going to give you a short overview on what we have done, what the demo has been so far. And we are going to understand the basic difference between an on-premises data setup versus a Fabric data flow setup. What happens in an on-premises? So you have your staging, then you have a warehouse, you do the incremental row, you run the SSIS job, you schedule the ETL refreshes, then you have the Power BI reporting, and then you have an on-premises data gateway setup, right? Which is the last thing. Post that you obviously schedule your refreshes. But what happens in a Fabric data flow, guys? In a Fabric data flow, the first thing that you do is actually the last thing of your on-premises data gateway. That is, if this only, of course, this is only when your your raw data is present in your on-premises, of course. So the first thing that you do is that you first get the on-premises data gateway set up, because now instead of using your on-premises data gateway to refresh the reports, you're actually using the on-premises data gateway to get the data into Fabric. So that is how the role of an on-premises data gateway has changed in this scenario. So of course, the first is your gateway setup, then you have the bronze, and then you have the silver layer, and then the final one is your gold layer. And then you run the incremental logic with your notebook stored procedures, get the pipeline schedule, and the fourth is your Power BI reporting. This could be your Fabric as a warehouse, or you can also create your semantic models with this. So before we move on to access and security in Fabric, let's go back to the demo here. Let's go ahead and create a semantic model here. Okay. So all I have to do here is select the tables that I require, or probably select one table and go to new semantic model. It's hanging a bit, guys. So please give me a moment. Let's give it a moment actually.
Yeah, fine. We will wait.
Yes. So yeah, since it's not showing, that means the warehouse is already, the semantic model is ready here. It's getting loaded. So this demo SM is the one that I have created. I'll try to go with open data model to set up my relationships here. So as you can see, my tables are whatever tables I have done, I have imported here. I can very well, this interface is very much similar to your Power BI desktop interface where you create your relationships, build your calculated measures, and get everything ready for your Power BI report data model. So there are two options which you can, there are two options for on how you utilize your semantic model. One is that you can use the Power BI service interface to create your relationships, or you can go to Power BI reports, click on a blank report, and directly you connect to that Power BI semantic model from your Power BI desktop. So again, what does this mean? It means that your data is still at one place. You're not actually importing any data to Power BI as you used to do it when you were trying for an import mode, right? So that again gives us an understanding of why Fabric keeps like the beauty of Fabric saying all the data is still in one place. Your semantic model doesn't have the data. Your Power BI report doesn't have the data. It's the warehouse where your goal layer is, that is where your data is present. And that data is, of course, your one lake. So I'll just go to create get data, select your Power BI semantic models. It, of course, asks you for a login of your Power BI service. Here, since it's already logged in, probably it should show me the list of semantic models that I have access to. So at this point, it is demo SM. So here is my table. So this is of course in a view mode. So if I have to make the changes, of course, I have to click on make changes to this model. And I will be able to edit my semantic model here as well. So as I mentioned, there are two ways to edit your semantic model. So now my goal layer is ready, my semantic model is ready. So what is the next step for this, of course? What is the next step? The next step is, of course, creating your Power BI reports. So the easiest way to do it is just going to that particular semantic model, right-clicking on that, and then you go ahead, click on create a report, and there you go. It creates a Power BI report, and this works in a direct lake mode. So Fabric has a new feature called direct lake. So what happens in a direct lake mode is that the query that the report query that is being hit at the reports end, instead of you hitting the semantic model or the warehouse, it will actually be hitting on the one lake data files that is present on Fabric. So your retrieval speed is very high, and also any data changes that may have occurred at the one lake level, at the data level, is almost immediately uh, visible in your Power BI report. So there is no need of any refresh schedules here. Sometimes, of course, the direct lake query may fail because of some features that you might have added in a semantic model where it switches to your direct query mode. In this direct query mode, it will be hitting on your warehouse tables to fetch the data. So this is how, guys, I hope you have understood on how and what huge difference we have when we of our traditional Power BI report, which we used to create before, versus how we are able to create it now. The final stage of this session will be understanding the types of accesses that the Fabric is currently providing. So there are basically three different types of access in Fabric. So एक tenant level access होता है, the second is your workspace level access, and the third being your individual level access. So what is your tenant level access? So there is one setting in the tenant settings which actually limits the access to Fabric objects across the tenant. So when you go to this, if you having an admin ID, you go to the tenant settings, you find an option called users can create Fabric items. Here, you can actually disable it so that no one will be using Fabric anymore. You can enable it, but then you can also create a security group. Say you want only, at this moment, you only want 5 people of your team to use Fabric because of the costing that it, incurs. So you can go ahead, create a security group, and then you add that security group over here, which this security group will only have those 5 members. So that is your tenant level access. The second tenant level access that you might require is that of Copilot. So when you when this setting is enabled, users can use the Copilot and the other features powered by the Azure OpenAI. This is your tenant level. Then comes to the workspace level access. So what happens here? Again, when you look at these 4 particular accesses, it's very much similar to your Power BI premium workspaces, right? An admin who controls everything, a member, and a contributor, and a reader. But now when it comes to Fabric, it's almost exactly the same that works on the Fabric objects. That is, like, if you are a reader to a Fabric workspace, you will be able to view everything. You cannot modify anything. You can view your reports also. If you are a contributor, you can create data sets, models. You can, maybe update some data in the particular lakehouse warehouse, update your keep uploading your reports, creating your reports with a semantic model and all. A member will obviously have more control over the workspaces such as data set pipelines and, assigning of other roles. With the final being the admin role, which we all are aware, which obviously it has everything in control. The third level of access that I'm talking about is the individual level, is also like there's one more thing called the workspace or a lakehouse level access. So towards my left is the lakehouse level access and towards my right is the warehouse level access. So with a lakehouse, you have 3 different options. And guys, this is also a very frequent question that comes up in the Microsoft Fabric certifications, where you get those questions, where you get your case studies. Those case studies have something called data scientists who wants to, run some analytics data workloads. And then you have data engineers who want to work on the updation of the data. So for data scientists, what role should I give? For my data engineers, what role should I give? These questions are the answers for those questions are depending on this the screen that I have presented here. That is my lakehouse and warehouse accesses. So if you give a read all SQL endpoint data, they will only be able to query the data. They'll not be able to do, of course, anything. The second with being able to read all the Apache Spark. The third being able to build reports on the default semantic model. So this ensures that probably if you are a Power BI reporter, you would want to have this tick marked against your ID. The second for a warehouse. The warehouse acting very much similar to your other SQL servers will have many options such as read all data using SQL. You can monitor your queries, you can audit queries, you can build reports on the default semantic model and all such things. So for anyone who's preparing for your Microsoft certifications, I think this workspace level, this particular lakehouse warehouse level access is very crucial for that exam. Yeah. I move on to the final access, that is the individual type of access. So how do you give an individual access is that suppose you have a semantic model, you want to at the workspace level, that particular person has a view access. So say, for example, I'm someone who belongs to the Fabric team, and I have a view access to the warehouse. But for the particular, I have a view access to the workspace. But if I want to create reports on that one particular semantic model which is present in this workspace for which I have read access, I can do that. That is, Fabric allows us to give individual accesses to the objects that belong to that particular workspace. So here I can give myself, I can get myself assigned to having build access to the semantic model, or even write access to the semantic model. For example, I could probably give you a show here. You can go to manage permissions. And here I can add user and I can give them several options. Like I can choose to having them allowing recipients to modify the data set. I can use them for sharing the semantic model or build the semantic model. Now, guys, this is actually the best part of the access feature of Fabric. Although it is giving you a full review access to the workspace, I can have special privileges of some objects that are present in that particular warehouse. So this is how I am differentiating between a user who has a view access versus a user who has view access along with the creation of Power BI reports on a semantic model. So now this leads us to the question ki, okay, so should I keep yes. Sorry, I am not able to hear you. Let me just put myself on mute once.
No, Anusha, you can continue. Someone unmuted accidentally. You can continue, Anusha. Hello, Anusha?
Yeah, Suparna.
You can continue.
Was that
You can
a question?
continue. No. That is something accidentally unmuted someone. You can continue.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'll continue. Yes, thank you. So now that you guys have an understanding of what kind of accesses are present, what happens is like, how do you choose what accesses are supposed to be there? How do you basically choose where should my warehouse be? Where should my lakehouse be? Should everything be in one particular workspace? Or should I create different workspaces based on the different features that I'm using? My recommendation and with my personal experience that I have on Microsoft Fabric is that it's better to have different workspaces for your different workloads. Suppose example, your data engineering, having members of your data engineering team should have your separate workspace where you have your data flow, Gen2s, you have your pipelines, your Fabric, your move data job, all in particular workspace. Then there should also be a separate workspace which should only have your data. That is your lakehouse, warehouse, or basically all your silver, gold, bronze layer. The third being a workspace which might just have only one that final semantic model or the Power BI reports that are being created. So by doing this, what are we achieving? Although we are saying that although the Fabric is entirely one place, we are actually differentiating our usage by differentiating the workspaces. So even though all of us are working on the same Fabric platform, depending on the work that we do, we are keeping our workload separate in separate workspaces. So understand that if it's a Power BI user who just needs to have a regular read access to that workspace, probably you can create a separate workspace for them, which will only host your Power BI and paginated reports. And that particular guy will only have view access. So no other objects, no other pipelines or warehouses will be visible to them. So this leads us to the conclusion of the session today, guys. That is a short summary of what we had started with. We started with understanding of what Fabric is and what the 4 major components of Fabric are. We also try to understand the similarities and drew comparisons between what an on-premises data setup is and how a Fabric data setup should be. Post that, we also understood how should a lakehouse, and how do we choose the right architecture for our fabric, and how should we be able to give the right access control to this to the fabric workspaces. So if I want to conclude this session today, I just want to say that it's very tempting to dive in big. Like, fabric seems to be very tempting, but then personally, I feel that we should start with, small and high value projects that are very low risk, but then they show immediate results. From the start, guys, we should ideally use the Medellin architecture to keep your data clean and structured across different layers. And then, of course, your security should be a top priority from day one. That is your access control. Fabric is all about collaboration, guys. Be it engineers, analysts, and BI developers all working together in a shared space, which makes this more efficient and agile. And finally, we should think about Fabric as not just as a final destination, but as a foundation for, building real-time and governed and, of course, AI-ready data experiences that will keep evolving with businesses. Thank you for the session. Thanks. That's the end of my session, guys. I'm open to any questions. Over to you, Suparna.
Yeah. Thanks for the wonderful session, Anusha. So I think we have a few of the questions from the chat. I think there are a couple of questions from the Aditya. Aditya, you can unmute yourself. You can ask.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Hi, Anusha. This is Aditya here. Hello. Yeah, Anusha.
If you are
Fabric support,
speaking, you are unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah, Fabric supports. There are multiple data types which we use in data warehouse in SQL Server as well. And
Yes.
how we can use unique identifier is stored in binary in delta Parquet format, right? That might not be directly called in our warehouses when we call it from the SQL endpoints. Like when you created a SQL endpoint, analytics endpoint, we cannot directly call the unique identifier. So did you face any of these challenges when you are doing it in migration, like data warehouse migration?
Sorry, is it okay if you repeat the question? I kind of didn't get the complete part. I missed out in some.
Generally, Fabric supports multiple data types, right?
Correct.
Whatever we use in SQL Server, and there are certain things which handle differently between the delta tables, when we use the Spark notebooks and everything, and the SQL Analytics endpoints which we use for our reporting and all. So in such cases, there are few examples like unique identifier in binary format. It will be stored in Parquet format, which cannot be called directly from SQL Analytics endpoint. So, is there any use cases which you face, like you store the data in using that kind of identifiers and not able to call, or how you overcome it? Like we have few use cases out of it.
Okay, so I have not come across, honestly, I've not come across this kind of data type, but I have come across other data type issues like, NVARCHAR not being supported in your Fabric. So we had to convert it into the ones that are, which the data types which are present. The other functionality being key identity column you cannot have in Fabric. So what is the alternate of generating the keys for Fabric? So such kind of such kind of issues we had come across. But yeah, definitely I'll if you could message this in the chat, I'll definitely take a look and revert back to you separately.
Yeah. And one more question is we consider like the data warehouse one, whatever with the demo which we looked is very good, but when we do it in organization level, right, there are terabytes of data at least in our organization. So there is a huge investment like from developers to DBAs or any other people like designing the databases and everything, store procs to SQL. So with these complex transformations, how we can migrate? So is there any, like you told, we need to have the things which are ready and compare, aggregate and everything. So what kind of scripts do you use to identify and to rebuild all these things into Fabric Medallion architecture, right? Anyway, raw data you mentioned, you can take it already. If we are having SSIS and everything, we already have a gold layer in the database level, right? In a data warehouse database.
Yes.
So again, do we need to do all this kind of React textual stuff, or else we can just bring the gold layer into our SQL database and do this kind of? And there are many other issues, right? Like the link servers, and there are
Yeah, link
cursors are
servers no
created. There
longer
are
work. That's a very major drawback. I mean, major concern for us also, because like major concern if you look at on-premises data warehouse setup.
yeah. I mean,
So yeah.
this we discussed in our
Mm.
FabCon event as well with you.
Okay.
I thought you did something after that.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so this is very concerning thing. The main question is we already have a gold layer. So
Correct.
so the gold layer we can directly import and do it, right? But whenever we are doing the
But
new batches or new pipelines, new reports, then we can follow this type of data, or else we already get the data into the gold layer.
yeah, if you want, see, it's all about if you want to create Power BI reports directly, and your aim is just to put the target data into the Fabric, yeah, you can directly go ahead, push your facts and dimension tables to your goal layer, and you're ready to go. But then comes the question of how do you set up the ETL? You can't continue using it. See, when you're going to Fabric, then you want to remove something that you are already using. That's where you do the cost saving. So you would want to eliminate your on-premises setup one by one. You want to get rid of all those things. So for that you need ETL, right? So for that you need a Medellin architecture, and that again requires the entire setup to be ready on Fabric.
Yeah. Why? Because there are multiple backend things, right? So
Yes.
in data warehouse you get from different sources, like
Exactly.
not exactly from CSV or some other thing, which is very basic, which we discuss generally. So there
Yes.
are other from Salesforce or else NetSuite or else any other third party teams, which we get it from different sources to data warehouse, right? That sources will be same, but the
That
only
data
data
sources will
warehouse
be
we are
same.
talking about migrating to the Fabric, right? So that
Yeah.
that that time, what exactly the steps we can take?
See, obviously, when you look at the data that you are already using now, whatever is in production right now, it's going to obviously sound very overwhelming. It definitely will have multiple data sources. It must be in a setup that's been running since many years, many ages. So that's what the migration strategy that is says. Don't take everything into your. My suggestion, of course, is not to take everything at once, not to put your entire structure at once in your first Fabric live. It should be stepwise. So the first step would be your taking up your major tables and its ETLs to Fabric, major workloads. Basically, whatever that's being highly utilized from the business, whatever reports which are being extremely utilized, those data and those workloads, those data sources should be your first ways of development in Fabric. So unless you take this up phase wise, it will always be overwhelming.
And one last question. I'm
Yes.
sorry if others are waiting for me. You can proceed. Like later, I'll ask that question.
Sure.
Else I'll ask this question and close it off.
No problem. Please continue.
Yeah, I think Michael, you have a question? Yeah, Michael, you can
Yes,
unmute
I
and
do.
ask.
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you so much, Anusha, for the beautiful session.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make some inquiries regarding migration of stored procedures, because I've worked on a project where I had to migrate stored procedures, SQL Server objects from Synapse dedicated pools to Fabric Warehouse. And while I'm doing my migration, I've migrated my stored procedures, but then realized within Fabric, the warehouse is quite case sensitive, so my object names being identified because of the case. So probably it expects all of the names to be in lowercase.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
was wondering, have you experienced this, and do you have a workaround to fix this? Because I had to start going into all of my stored procedures and queries to fix these issues here and there.
So yes, I do. This is also something that it's a very common issue that you have pointed out. So there are two things that you need to focus about here, Michael. That is like, what is your end target? Like, if you want to make things easy, then you should. So they're like, so let me just go back and repeat myself. There are three approaches that you can follow. The first approach depends on what do you want to repoint your Power BI reports? Do you want to repoint your paginated reports? Because if you want to just simplify the warehouse migration by just lifting the script here and deploying it in Fabric, because both are warehouses and both are on SQL, then it's better to continue with the case formatting that is present in the on-prem in your Synapse warehouse. Because once the tables are loaded, there must have been many other store procedures, views, and many many applications which must have been consuming your data, correct? So for
Yeah.
that, you would still want to, you would probably, to make things easier, you would still want to continue having the same case sensitivity. The same, what do you say, formatting of your column names, table names, and your data, the same as to Fabric. Yeah, that's a tough challenge. Because what happens, the issues that come up there is that, Michael, the table structures, it's fine. But then store procedures and the views on running that have been running on databases which didn't have case sensitivity issue, that is, you could have written in uppercase or lowercase, you will definitely get the output.
Yeah.
If your team has not been following that and randomly used uppercase, lowercase for your existing SPs, it is a tough call to push it to Fabric, because it is not because Fabric is your case sensitive. So it will keep on throwing us, which I believe you are having that. So
exactly.
The second thing that although I'm not an expert here, this is just an outcome of the conversations that I had internally with other Fabric developers, is that you convert everything to one case. So when you're migrating, you put everything in uppercase or you put everything in lowercase. Follow one formula. So by doing this, it's like, see, if you have a script, you directly hit the uppercase thing, everything runs, everything immediately converts to uppercase. Right. It's easy to take the script out and convert everything to uppercase or lowercase. So by doing this, you will have uniformity. That is the second thing that you can follow. There's also a third option that I am exploring, but I do not have the right process here, is that I think that when you create a Fabric workspace, Michael, there's an option to disable the case sensitivity. Although I'm not pretty sure, so I am also going to research and get back to you on this. Is that you can, while creation of the workspace itself, you can remove the case sensitivity. So with that, your Fabric will not be case sensitive anymore, and you can run your workloads and your SPs will be seamlessly can be deployed. But I just have to explore this further. I will definitely let you know. Yeah. But I would suggest to you also to have a look at that default case sensitivity option that comes up when you create a workspace.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Thank you so much for the
Thanks, Michael. I hope I was able to answer your question. At least
absolutely.
Somewhat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I